Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Phiyani Lebea. I'm the Chief Scientific Officer at Tokabio. And today I'm excited to discuss and present to you our perspective of biological disaster management post-COVID-19. And this is our experience and also our future plans. Next slide, please. In disaster management, which is a fairly old discipline of managing pathogens within a population. This could be in humans or in animals. There is obviously in our case discussing biological threats, and these are exemplified by COVID-19 pandemic. And what we are certain about is that there will be outbreaks going into the future. What we are uncertain about is how will we as South Africa and as Africa deal with these pandemics in future. Do we have the plans to deal with this? Are we mobile and agile enough to meet the challenges of the future? I think at this point, I may as well indicate that we have been lucky as a continent, especially as a country as well, that we had some of the resources that have allowed us to mitigate some of the effects. The testing in South Africa, I think, has been the most compared to the continent. But we also know that the preparedness in itself, whether we are able to meet these challenges head on, it's something else that is completely different from whether you are able to test or not. It is, are you able to mitigate the effect of the pandemic? In our case, we know that the livelihood and the lives are interchangeable in this case, in that the more people you have that are healthier, the better you can look after the economy. The more you're able to look at the economy, the easier it is to afford to look at the health of the people. In this presentation today, I'm going to talk about some of the things that Tokabio is doing to make sure that as a country, we are prepared for future biological disasters. One of the things I'll talk about is how easily mobile we need to be and how agile we need to be to reach some of the most remote areas within our country. And we're able to move to key points in as early as possible. We also want to show you that we have the capability for all the designs and the application of tests that are required for biological disasters. But we also know that we are only one cog in the early preparedness for a pandemic or a disease outbreak. And this has to be streamlined with the national framework, it be compliance, it be the national department that deals with disaster management, or within municipalities where disaster management has actually been integrated to make sure that such things are taken care of. Next slide, please. Tokabio has experience and knowledge of working with pathogens. This is exemplified with our project as an example for animal work in Botswana, where we do where we are collaborating with Botswana International University of Science and Technology to work on COVID-19 program to facilitate economic progression. In other words, how can you make sure that COVID-19 testing within the border post is acceptable within the SADC region widely? And how do you make sure that it's validated across different countries? This is part of preparedness. You would be aware that for a lot of times we have trucks that are parked at the border post, and we are unable to move those specific economic commodities across the borders. We also do work in animal disaster management, specifically foot and mouth disease. We haven't been able to do this in South Africa as we wanted to do it, but South Africa is list of the most affected countries in that. We have institutes that are specifically dealing with those outbreaks, but in the rest of the continent, this is part of the problem where the institutes themselves are not equipped enough to be able to identify, contain, and where necessary, mitigate the issues that come up with a disease or pathogen outbreak. We have been able to do foot and mouth disease surveillance and detection in Rwanda. We are cooperating with our colleagues in Mozambique for COVID-19. We are working with our colleagues, again, with the support of the Ministry of Science and Technology in Angola. I think Angola and Uganda has been one of those places where the science and technology has been very much in the forefront in supporting Tokabio to access the market, but not just access the market, but take South African technology into the continent in a way that helps. We do work in South Sudan and Zambia. And I would like to announce in this case that we are working on a specialized unit which should be within our shores as early as November or very early in December, where we have mobility, and within a mobile unit, we have a laboratory that is easily mobile to the point of care where such tests are required. And it is important to say in this case that places like your ports of entry, your key points, whether it's your airport or your border or your harbor by the sea entry point, needs mobility. It cannot always be that you can set up something that is a permanent structure that can be used anytime that you need to use it. But it has to be something that is possible to use as and when it is required. I'm proud to say that Tokabio has taken this fight to manage outbreaks in both humans and animals to a higher level, where mobility and agility and having kits and tests that are CE approved and SAPRA approved to maintain the outbreaks and certain mitigating processes very early on. Next slide, please. This is just part of what we would put in our mobile infrastructure. We have agreements with international and multinational companies that we would be able to put in PCR-based detection, isothermal PCR-based detection, lateral flow, whether it's antigen testing or antibody-based testing. All these will be available within a mobile unit that can move from one point to the other. And it is this exciting development that is South African design and it's South African made that helps us to know that come the next pandemic, we would be ready and we would be agile enough to make sure that we are able to contain this. Let me give a simple example in this case. We know that COVID-19 did not develop in South Africa. It came from elsewhere overseas. And we also are fairly certain that the first cases came through the aeroplane. In other words, our South African people went outside, and when they came back, they were infected. And what happened? They went through the airport, we checked their temperature, we did not mandate testing. Even if we did, we didn't have enough testing capacity for everybody that comes through. And where we did have the testing capacity, we didn't have enough tracing capability to go and find who else could be infected through the same people that went through. What do we need for that? We need about three things. First, we need to increase the manufacturing of the reagents that are required to do the detection within the country. For this, there are many startups and other established companies that could easily change this and manufacture within the country. Secondly, we need approved, validated tests that are developed and are also adapted to our people and our scenario within the region, so that we're able to do the tests that are actually legit and we're able to move forward. This is where Tokabio comes in. And we need to make sure that those tests are streamlined and make sure that they comply with the regulations that there is within the country, where it be SANAS accreditation or it be registration with whatever authorities that are required. And we have qualified people from pathologists to medical technologies that can man and run this, and we can contain it. And we don't have to be a rich country. I mean, if you look at Taiwan, and if you look at New Zealand, and to a certain extent South Korea, you will see that the way that they've been able to manage the pandemic has less to do with the wealth of the country, but a lot to do with the planning and being able to mobilize what you need to have to control, and where you can control, mitigate, and make sure that the pandemic or the spread of the community spread of that outbreak is slowed as much as possible. Next slide, please. This is just one of the developments that Tokabio has made. We have software, actually two types of software, which we are able to develop and collect samples for field operators, and we can collect those samples, we can test those samples, we can dump the data online, and some people that are more experienced in that data sitting at a remote area can look at those results immediately and be able to communicate back with the operators that may be in the mobile lab. In other words, I can sit in Johannesburg and be able to monitor what is happening within the Durban Harbour with our technology. In that case, we're able to say, that person is positive, this one is negative. Can we start the tracing immediately? This would slow considerably the spread of COVID-19 as would have it. And here's a simple example. If, as an example, in South Africa, we had eventually the COVID-19 spreading to everybody within a 10-year period, as opposed to, say, a year and a half. It means that the fact that you are able to slow it down, you allow the economy to operate with little hindrance. The fact that you are not able to contain it to within small pockets and let it continue slowly, it means that you will be unable to control the mortality and the morbidity that comes with the outbreak. And in this case, it means the more you apply the principles of disaster management, and also having able and skillful operators that are able to contain it, it augurs well for the country. And I think this is the one chance that we have to support all the startups and all the new ideas, and make sure that they're channeled into the right direction so that we are prepared for the next pandemic. Next slide, please. These are just some of the instruments that within Tokabio we've developed with our partners in Australia, Exim Limited, where we are able to run isothermal PCR. And even for the COVID-19, this once registered will probably be one of the first isothermal PCR for COVID-19 developed within the African continent. And we are working hard on this to get the data published and submitted to SAPRA, so that within the next 2, at most 3 months, we have this registered in a way that actually helps us to have the testing capability done properly. And this is one of those instruments that are portable, and the processing is very easy in that you do not need to have a full-time lab. But in this case, where we do supply a mobile facility, it is even safer in that you can run this in a negative pressure controlled room with filtered HEPA filters, and all the air that goes out of this vehicle is also filtered to make sure that you don't contaminate the environment. And it's an example of homemade, home-developed technology that can be used to mitigate against the biological disaster. Next, please. I can give some of the milestones that we've achieved as a company that augurs well for the preparedness of our country. On the research phase, we can look at who were the first Black-owned company to register COVID-19 CE-approved extraction kit and PCR detection kit. We've been able to run some training courses also on the next generation sequencing and related work to COVID-19. And we have multiple collaboration partners within SADC and within the East Africa region. And we've been able to look at other commercial programs where, as an example, we work with the Zambia ShopRite checkers in making sure that the poultry that comes within their shops is been detected and been tested properly. There's different committees that we participate in to look at what is the best way to look at our people and be able to design tests that can be certified and can be used for various outbreaks. Specifically in this case, we're working a lot more on the border posts, not just South African, but also for our neighbors, where we are looking at how do you validate and make sure that the tests that are run in South Africa are compatible, if not similar, to what we run in neighboring countries with South African and world-class standards. Next slide. Tokabio has come a long way, and we do have our own marketing team that takes Tokabio to different conferences, and in this case, I must thank Technology Innovation Agency for some of the great support that they've showed our company and some of the marketing excursions. We are able to put out a field lab, not only the mobile lab that we have, that we can set up within a day, and by the second day, we are able to run some of the tests that are required with the highest caliber of containment. Very recently, given the need within our country to do the testing, we have been able to work on COVID-19 and do some of the standardization and some of the work that is required to get that registered and certified. We have an animal health team. As you can see on the picture, we've been able to do some work on buffaloes in countries outside South Africa. And we do all the surveillance and the detection, control, and management of animal outbreak, the disease outbreak, whether it's bacterial or fungal. This is part of our portfolio. And what we are looking at going forward, even at a bigger scale, is how do you perform disaster management for biological outbreak? This could be the future where it is not just somebody coming in a plane and then spreading the disease. It could be something that is malicious and intended. We have to have the capacity in this country to contain such. And Tokabio, in this case, is just one cog in making sure that South Africa is ready and can look after its own citizens going into the future. Next slide. I would like to thank especially Technology Innovation Agency for all the support that it has given us and the funding throughout. Our partners in Australia, Exxon, for all the co-development that we've worked together over the years. And I would like to thank also the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition for the support, especially on the border post COVID-19 testing program that we are embarking on, and the science and technology for the rest of the countries that, and the funding over the years that it has helped us to make sure that we can develop South African-based disaster management protocols. Thank you.